Welcome to Stories with Pablo. Step into a world of timeless tales and captivating folklore from every corner of the globe. At Pablo Stories, we share enchanting stories filled with wisdom, adventure, and mystery. From ancient legends and mythical creatures to inspiring moral tales, our channel is your gateway to the magic of storytelling. Subscribe now to experience the wonder of words, the richness of culture, and the timeless lessons that connect us all. Join the Pablo family and help keep these stories alive, one tale at a time. Sparkle's new stories every day. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an adventure. Your journey into the world of stories starts here. Now, let's continue. By the last week of the season, the palace seemed as full of spies as a cortege. Every footstep felt watched, every promise, a threat exposed. Yet for all the gathering storm, Amara and Olumide clung to the light they had built, a shimmering hope, fragile but real. Their union was now an open secret, and everyone in Esura, nobles, healers, queens, waited for the inevitable explosion. A storm was coming, one that would wash away secrets and perhaps, at last, reveal what love could survive. Chapter 6. The Weight of Legacy. The end of an era. The temple bells tolled solemnly through Esura's heavy air, a sound that seemed to press down the very breath of the city. The tide was turning with greater force than anyone had dared imagine. Chief Priestess lay frail upon her woven mat in the temple's innermost chamber, her breath shallow and slow, the incense swirling thick around her as a ritual drumming echoed softly. Her gaze found Amara's, steady, full of unspoken love and sorrow. "My daughter," she whispered, voice barely more than a breeze, "the spirits call me home. It is time for you to carry the burden and the blessing. Our village's prayers, the people's faith, rest in your hands now." Amara's heart ached beneath the weight of those words. "I will carry it as you did, with all that I have." The priest's hand reached out, grasping Amara's firmly, a final offering of strength before the light in her eyes dimmed and she slipped away, her passing a turning point not only for her family but for the entire kingdom. Outside the temple, the news spread with hush and reverence. The chief priest had passed, and her daughter was now the keeper of ancient rites and silent power, a mantle as heavy as the stones of the altar itself. 2. A king's last breath. Nearly at the same moment, King Ediwale, frail and resting in his palace bed, felt the deep well of his years pull him under. The palace halls whispered with the quiet urgency of courtiers and priests, signaling that the great man's reign was coming to its close. Olumide stood vigil by his father's side, hands clasped tightly, fighting tears born from years of unspoken love and duty. The king's voice, frail but steady, broke the silence. "My son, the kingdom turns to you. Carry it well. Remember the people who wait beyond these walls. Lead with heart." Olumide bowed his head. "I promise, father, I will not fail you." When the king's breath finally ceased, a stillness like the calm after storm fell over the palace. The crown passed, silent and solemn, along with an unspoken expectation deeply burdening the young prince. 3. The meeting that never was. That evening, a fragile hope stirred in Olumide's heart. Days of mourning would begin, yet he sought solace in the only place that ever felt truly his own, the secret garden where Amara waited. Clad in a simple cloak, drawn tight against the cool night, he hurried toward the familiar fig tree, his thoughts tangled between grief and longing. But fate, ever unyielding, intervened. As he neared the garden's gate, a royal messenger intercepted him with urgent news. "Prince Olumide, the kingdom needs you. The mourning rituals and the acceptance of your new role cannot wait. The council demands your presence." His heart shattered. He turned away with a whispered apology caught by the winds, words never delivered to Amara's waiting ears. 4. The growing distance. For weeks, Olumide's duties as king multiplied beyond any lesson or preparation. The crowded halls of the palace swallowed his time and his spirit. The sacred burdens Amara had inherited with the priest's death only deepened her own responsibilities. She led rites, settled disputes, and became a beacon for the people who looked to her with hope and expectation. Their once regular moments together grew sparse, replaced by fleeting glances and passing courtesies. Letters piled up silently in Amara's chambers, some unopened, others torn aside with trembling hands torn between longing and resignation. Though they both ached for the touch and comfort of each other's presence, the weight of their new roles erected walls no kiss could yet scale. The hidden life. Amora's own body began to change subtly, but amidst the village duties and ritual demands, her focus was elsewhere. No quiet moment remained to listen to the rhythms within, no space for careful thought. It was not until nearly 3 months later, during a rare peaceful night as she sat beneath the lantern-lit temple portico, that the unmistakable signs revealed themselves. A hidden weight settled in her womb, faltering breaths and sudden waves of exhaustion whispered truth she could no longer deny. Her hands trembled as she sought out her mother's old remedies and soft prayers, lips moving in quiet questions to the gods and ancestors. With a mixture of awe, fear, and rising hope, Amara embraced a secret growing within her, a promise of new life bound to a love forged in shadow and light. 6. A future yet unwritten. Far from the temple, Olumide wore the weight of his crown with heavy resolve, unaware of the life slowly coming into being under the watchful eyes of the gods and the daughter he loved beyond his reach. Each stood at the crossroads, Amara, the new priestess carrying the legacy of both her mother and the bloodline growing within, and Olumide, the king whose every breath now carried the hopes of Esura. Under the quiet stars, their destinies shimmered, a hidden child heartbeat writing its own rhythm in the story of the kingdom. Chapter 7. Secrets and Shadows of the Heart. The birth of hope. Far from Esura's gilded palace and crowded streets, beyond the city's gaze and whispers, Amara returned to the humble village where she once lived with her mother. Nestled between rolling hills and shimmering streams, it was a place of quiet prayers and old magic, where ancestors' voices were carried on the wind and the earth itself seemed to guard secrets. In a small, dim chamber wrapped in woven mats and fragrant herbs, Amara gave birth to a son, a child born under a silver crescent moon, quiet as a secret and fierce as a promise. Her mother, the village elder and priestess of forgotten rites, cradled both mother and child with prayers and soothing chants, weaving blessings in the fragile dawn. She named the boy Kofi, meaning born on Friday, a day of change and hope according to ancient tradition. Amara's heart swelled with love even as it ached with grief and longing. This child was both shield and sword, a living testament to a love kept hidden, and a hope for a future yet unwritten. Keep his name safe, her mother urged softly, her eyes full of knowing. The world may not yet be ready. And so, under the cloak of secrecy, Amara vowed to protect her son from a court full of shadows, where power and politics could crush innocence like fragile petals. 2. The prince's marriage, a time of shadows. Back in Esura, the court buzzed with uneasy tension and mounting pressure. The king's passing had left a vacuum filling rapidly, not just with grief, but with urgency. Queen Tola, a master of calculated moves, pressed her influence upon Olumide, steering the young king toward a union that would solidify alliances and calm stirred factions. Within weeks of his father's death, Olumide announced his engagement, and soon after, his marriage, to Lady Isioma. The palace was transformed overnight into a stage for grand ceremonies and whispered secrets. Silk banners bore Isioma's family crest alongside the royal sigil as musicians played songs of unity and power. Nobles from every corner of the kingdom arrived, their eyes bright with speculation. Yet behind the flourishes of celebration, a brittle tension threaded through every interaction. Olumide's smile, though practiced and regal, faltered in stolen moments. His nights without Amara's touch became colder, lonelier. In private chambers, he grappled with a tempest of duty, longing, and concealed heartbreak. Isioma, poised as ever, masked her own wounds. Publicly radiant, she cloaked burning jealousy beneath the refined grace expected of queens. Alone, she whispered prayers for strength and whispered warnings to herself against the shadow she feared would never fully leave her husband's heart. 3. Letters left unsent. As the palace echoed with feast and fanfare, Olumide's hands moved almost absent-mindedly over unfinished letters, words meant for Amara, for the woman who held his soul tethered unseen. But with the growing responsibilities of kingship, the council's demands, state matters, and the ever-watchful eyes of the court, those letters remained drafts, folded and refolded on silk-padded desks. In the quietest hours, Olumide wondered if Amara still remembered him, or the boy who before his crown wrapped him in chains. His heart clenched at the thought of the son he had never met, the life growing beyond the shadows. 4. Amara's silent vigil. Far from palace's light and noise, Amara's days were filled with sacred rituals, childhood lessons, and secret fays. Caring for Kofi drew both a joy and anguish, each smile from the child a balm, each crying night a sting. She pondered the precarious thread that bound her to Esura's fate, from which she had fled, but could not escape. Rumors of the prince's marriage reached her ear through disguised messengers and whispered prayers on the wind. The news splintered her heart, igniting a fire tempered by resolve. Her path was now divided. Protect her son in the shadows while guarding the fragile hope that one day their truth might walk the sunlit roads. The tension tightens. In Esura, the whispers grew louder. Courtiers debated the consequences of Olumide's marriage, while speculative glances searched for signs of cracks beneath the ceremony's polished exterior. Isioma's keen instincts told her that the prince's heart belonged elsewhere, and no bridal veil could truly bind a restless spirit. A private meeting arranged between the queen and her daughter-in-law crackled with silent threats and veiled warnings. "Remember, Isioma," Queen Tala said softly, "your place is beside your king, not behind him. Be the strength he needs when the past comes calling." At the same time, Olumide found himself powerless to stop the currents carrying him away from Amara, his silent promises battling the unyielding weight of duty. 6. A kingdom suspended. As the kingdom celebrated its new queen, shadows lengthened in hidden places. Servants exchanged uneasy glances, and in darkened corners, the name Kofi passed silently like a prayer. Amara lifted her son beneath the open sky, feeling the cool breeze whisper of destinies unfolding beyond kingdoms and crowns. Her gaze turned to the distant lights of Esura, where her love wore a crown, and a choice heavier than any made before. Their story had become more than personal. It was now poised to change the fabric of Esura itself. Special scene, the night of reckoning and revelation. The village of Esura was cloaked in an uneasy hush. Months of dry winds had seared the earth, and the river that usually fed the field with life had shrunk to a faint ribbon of water. Crops withered as hope thinned, and murmurs of despair drifted through the market and temple alike. Queen Tala's council, desperate for salvation, reluctantly sent word to Amara, the once priestess, now custodian of ancient knowledge and healing. Her reputation as a seer and healer had grown far beyond Esura's walls. Though distanced by politics and pain, Amara's connection to the land was undeniable. When the messenger found her, tending to her young son beneath the cool boughs of their village grove, she listened with steady resolve. "The village calls upon you once more," the herald said. "The king himself seeks your aid." Though her heart tightened with mixed emotions, Amara rose without hesitation. The land, its people, still held a piece of her soul, no matter the palace walls or broken promises. The healing rite. Esura's temple was dim-lit with flickering oil lamps. The scent of sage and myrrh thickened the air. Villagers gathered in hopeful silence while Amara prepared sacred herbs and incantations learned from her mother's ancient texts. Olumide, now crowned king, sat near the altar, a shadow of worry lingering in his broad shoulders. His eyes, though regal and guarded, softened when they met Amara's steady gaze. "It is good to see you again, Amara," he said quietly. "The village has not forgotten the light you bring." She inclined her head, gaze changeling with a flicker of tenderness and regret. "Nor have I forgotten the debt I owe to the land or to you." The ceremony was solemn and charged, as Amara's voice wove ancient prayers over the parched earth and wilted crops. Her hands, steady and sure, scattered blessed water and crushed leaves, drawing life-giving essence back into the soil. As the gathered crowd murmured prayers, Olumide's fingers found haze, a silent bond rekindled beyond the words and robes. When the final blessing fell into the night air, the first raindrops, soft, heavy, sacred, kissed the cracked earth. 2. The private hour. Later, as the village celebrated the coming rain with whispered gratitude and modest feasting, Olumide and Amara slipped away into the moonlit palace gardens, their secret haven. The air was cool but charged with the fire of reunion and unspoken longing. Olumide's hand brushed Amara's cheek, his touch a gentle plea. "You returned," he breathed, "against all that stands between us." She smiled, soft, bittersweet, but stepped closer, her breath mingling with his. "I come for Esura, but I hope you know I return for you as well." Their mouths met in a kiss both fierce and tender, a reclaiming of lost time and stolen moments. The world around them faded as Olumide's hands traced a line of her waist, pulling her into a dance as old as desire itself. Free, a child's secret. In the calm after-passion storm, As their breaths slowed beneath the ancient fig tree that had witnessed their love's first bloom, Amara held Olumide's face in her hands. "There is something you must know," she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute. He searched her eyes, the weight of years, of pain, of hope pooling in his gaze. "I am with child," she said softly. "Your child." For a moment silence stretched, filled only by the rustle of leaves and distant rainfall. Olumide's fingers tightened around Hayes, the enormity of the moment cloaking his expression in fierce light. "Where is he?" His voice was a hushed desperation, careful yet demanding. Amara shook her head gently, holding him close. "Safe, protected, not yet ready to walk the roads of Esura." His brow furrowed with unease, a tempest storming in his heart. "You should have told me." "I had to choose, for his safety and for yours," she replied, voice steady but aching. "Trust me, Olumide. One day, all truths will reveal themselves." 4. The King's Turmoil. In the days that followed, Olumide wore a restless shadow. The knowledge of his unborn son, hidden and far, became a thorn in his regal composure. At court and council, his mind flickered between duty and desire, loyalty and longing. Isioma's presence grew ever sharper, a reminder of promises made and futures planned. Yet, in quiet moments beneath the palace's soaring arches, Olumide touched the space near his heart where Mora's truth now lived, an ache, a hope, a secret burden entwined with love and uncertainty. The child's unknown place haunted his steps and dreams, shaping the king's thoughts in a restless rhythm that only Amora's voice could soothe, yet never fully resolve. Chapter 8. The Hidden A and the Crowned Demand. A life veiled in simplicity. Far from the golden halls and thundering footsteps of Esura's palace, Kofi grew up unaware of his true birthright. The boy lived in a remote village nestled between rolling hills and whispering forests, where the soil was rich but the world was small. He was known only as Amara's son, a child of the land, whose laughter echoed across fields and whose hands learned the calluses of honest labor. His days were filled with the sun's warmth and the village's rhythms, the rise and fall of the river, the harvest festivals, the tales of old told by elders under starlit skies. No crown adorned his head, no grand throne awaited him. His destiny was a quiet one, shaped by the love and teachings of the mother who bore him in secret, shielding him from dangers and intrigues he could not yet comprehend. Kofi was strong and spirited, kind-hearted, with a shadow of restlessness that none in the village could explain. 2. Duty's unyielding chains. Meanwhile, in the marble heart of Esura's palace, King Olumide walked a path forged by expectation and sacrifice. Though his heart belonged to Amara, and to the unborn child she carried, the demands of kingship, the memory of his father's crown, and the throne's relentless gaze left him little choice. Queen Tola, ever vigilant, heralded the urgency of duty with growing voice. The union with Lady Isioma was no longer a matter of preference but a necessity, a shield for the kingdom, a symbol of stability for wary nobles and teetering alliances. Olumide's wedding to Isioma was swift, marked by a ceremony both lavish and tense. Courtiers whispered of the union, speculation wrapping like ivy through the courts. Yet the king's eyes often drifted behind the queen's poised smile, haunted by the secret bond in the son he had never seen. Though bound by obligation, Olumide carried a restless soul. In stolen moments of silence, his mind would wander to the village child, a future shadow he dared not face openly. 3. The Return and the Revelation. One day, driven by an unspoken force, Amara brought Kofi closer to Esura, not to the palace or its splendor, but to the edge of the kingdom, where the wildlands bordered the court and where fate could no longer hide its hand. The boy marveled at the dwarfing trees, the distant drums, and the thrill of voices unlike his village's quiet chorus. Yet Amara's gaze remained watchful and cautious. One evening, under a canopy of stars, she summoned Olumide to their secret meeting place, the garden where love had first sparked, where joy and pain intertwined. Olumide arrived, regal but weary, eyes lighting with disbelief and hope as he beheld Kofi, a boy alive with quiet dignity, with his mother's eyes and his own blood. "Is this my son?" he breathed. Amara nodded, voice steady but laced with sorrow. "There are dangers. He cannot live within the palace walls, not yet. But he is here, growing, as strong as the land itself." 4. The King's Torment. Olumide's joy was scarred by the impossible weight of circumstance. The knowledge of his son's existence was a balm to his soul but a torment to his crown. The court's politics swirled darker and louder, and his marriage to Isioma remained a binding yoke. Though love still stretched between him and Amara, the king's place was with his queen, and his duty was to the people and to legacy. Yet the secret of the child, held close in a quiet glade beyond the palace's reach, became a flickering flame in Olumide's restless nights, haunting him with a question no crown could answer. Can a king protect both his throne and his heart? The unseen future. Kofi, meanwhile, dreamed under the open sky, unaware of crowns or courts, of destinies written in parchment and bloodlines whispered in shadows. Amara watched him, a mother both proud and aching, guarding him fiercely while nurturing a fragile hope that one day the truths that divided them might be reconciled in light and not lost to secrecy. The boy's path was uncertain, but his story was only beginning. The hidden A and the harvest of fate. The rise of Kofi, the enlightened farmer. Years passed quietly in the remote village where Kofi grew from boy to man, unaware of the royal blood that flowed within his veins. Under Amara's loving guidance, he blossomed into a remarkable young man, known not just for his strength but for his keen mind and inventive spirit. Kofi transformed the small farmland surrounding their village with new techniques inherited partly from whispered ancestral lore and partly from his own observation of nature's rhythms. He introduced innovative irrigation channels, rotating crops to nourish the soil, and detailed craftsmanship in woodworking and tools that eased the daily toil of village life. The villagers came to respect and rely on him not just as a hard-working son of the earth, but as a quiet leader whose wisdom often exceeded his simple title. Yet beneath his industrious exterior flickered a yearning he could not name, a vague sense of something lost, a distant call he could not yet follow. 2. Shadows over Esura. Meanwhile, far beyond the fertile hills and humming forests that nurtured Kofi, Esura lay heavy beneath an oppressive shadow. A strange and relentless famine spread through the kingdom, bending the once thriving fields to dust, gnawing relentlessly at the people's stores, and darkening hearts with growing despair. The river that fed Esura's land slowed to a sluggish thread, and even the ancient wells seemed reluctant to yield their life-giving water. Crops wilted at season's peak, livestock weakened, and the air grew thick with desperation. King Olumide, now settled into the deep crown of leadership and bound by far-reaching duties, found himself crippled by frustration and fear. Despite counsel from scholars, priests, and envoys, no solution emerged. The spirits whispered unrest, and the people's prayers grew frantic, yet the heavens remained silent. Free calls across the land. Amidst this tragedy, ancient voices remembered the healer priestess who once brought life to a dying land. The queen's advisors, desperate for relief, wrote urgent pleas to the nearby villages known for their knowledge of sacred earth and healing rites, including the region where Amara and Kofi lived. Though wary of court calls and the danger they carried, Amara took the summons seriously. The famine was a threat not just to Esura, but to all their wider kin and future, their survival bound to fragile cycles of earth, rain, and community. With Kofi by her side, now strong, wise, and skilled, Amara prepared to journey back to the kingdom she had left behind. 4. The tide shifts. Upon arrival, the sight of Esura's desolation struck Kofi deeply. The vibrant kingdom he had never known was sick and starving, its spirit bowed and desperate. Kofi's eyes filled with resolve. Using his knowledge of the soil and the secrets taught by his mother, and inspired by the plight of the people, he began to teach new farming methods, water conservation innovations, and sustainable crafting that could renew what had been lost. Together, father and son worked, Olumide lending his authority to empower Kofi's reforms, Amara guiding the spiritual rites to heal the land. Slowly, hope returned like dawn. The legacy rekindled. As field began to bloom anew and the river rose with fresh clarity, the kingdom saw the promise of its future reflected in a sun raised in humble soil, yet carrying the noblest blood. Olumide's heart ached with pride and bittersweet longing for a son who had grown beyond shadows and for the kingdom that might yet be healed by love, wisdom, and hard-won courage. Amara watched as the son became a bridge between worlds, peasant and prince, healer and craftsman, the living hope of Esura's rebirth. And in that rebirth, the seeds of a new story of compassion, resilience, and truth were sown deep within the heart of the land. Chapter 9. The Divine Riddle and the Rising Strife. Desperate prayers to the gods. As the famine deepened, with crops failing and rivers receding further, King Olumide and his council reached a point of desperate resolve. The ancient temples of Esura, sacred to the gods who governed earth and sky, were summoned for celestial answer. The people gathered amid smoke and drums, raising prayers that echoed through the stone halls and into the heavens. Priests and priestesses led solemn rites, seeking the favor and guidance of the divine. Yet the gods remained silent to all but one, Kofi. Late one night, as the ritual fires burned low, the temple seer, an elderly, wizened woman who had observed Kofi when he first arrived, approached the king and Amara. Her voice was hushed but urgent. The gods have spoken. The key to salvation lies in a riddle, but only he who walks both earth and crown can unlock it. All eyes turned to Kofi, the son of hidden blood, whose humble origin shielded him yet made him the destined interpreter. 2. The riddle of the gods. The riddle was presented as a woven tapestry of words, passed down in cryptic phrases. I grow without roots, drink without thirst, give birth without womb, and die without death. What am I? The court was baffled. Scholars debated endlessly. Priests murmured in sacred tongues, but the answer remained elusive. But Kofi, raised close to the land and its secrets, saw beyond the obvious. One twilight, after days of contemplation beneath ancient cedars, he spoke. The answer is a river. It flows freely without roots, drinks the sky without thirst, nurtures life without womb, and yet disappears without dying. The court was stunned. The wisdom of the earth and the heavens had revealed itself through him. Free, a new role in the kingdom. Impressed by his insight and knowledge, King Olumide formally appointed Kofi as an administrator of the kingdom's environmental and agricultural affairs, a role unprecedented for one of low birth but worthy blood. Kofi's reforms, rooted in both practical skill and spiritual insight, began transforming the fields and waterways. His leadership brought renewed respect from many courtiers and commoners alike. Yet amidst this rise, Amara cautioned her son in private. Remember who you are, Kofi. The blood of kings courses through your veins. Your path may be clearer now, but others will seek to darken it. 4. Isioma's thorn. True to Amara's warning, Lady Isioma's eyes burned with resentment and fear. Kofi's growing influence threatened not only her political standing, but her hold over King. In secret councils and whispered intrigues, Isioma worked to undermine the boy who was heir in all but name. She spread doubt and suspicion, painting Kofi as an outsider and a threat to Esura's stability. Tensions rose as factions formed, and the kingdom stood on the edge of turmoil. The kingdom's choice. As rival interests clashed, Olumide faced an agonizing choice: to embrace a son who might bring renewal but disrupt tradition, or to uphold the fragile order carved by alliances and obligation. In this crisis, Kofi's identity, peasant, prince, healer, and now a king's envoy, became the fulcrum upon which Esura's fate balanced. The gods' riddle had opened the door, but what lay beyond was a labyrinth of power, loyalty, and love tested to their limits. Chapter 10. The Rift and the Rising Leader. A rift ignites. Tension simmered quietly at first between Esura and the remote village where Kofi had been raised. The lingering famine strained resources, making every drop of water and grain precious and contested. What began as minor disputes over grazing lands and irrigation rights soon escalated into bitter accusations. The villagers claimed heavy taxation and neglect from the royal court. Esura's traders accused the villagers of hoarding supplies. One fateful night, a violent skirmish erupted at the border, a clash of spears and raised voices that threatened to ignite a full-scale war. Fear spread like wildfire as neighbors braced for a conflict that could engulf both communities. 2. A son of two worlds. Desperate for peace, King Olumide summoned Kofi, whose wisdom and knowledge had already begun to renew their lands. Though Kofi's background was a secret to most, Olumide trusted the young man's unique grasp of both village life and royal expectations. At the royal council, Kofi spoke with calm authority. We must heal old wounds with new understanding. War will only deepen our suffering. I propose a council of village elders and royal representatives to restore trust and fairness. His words carried weight, but so did the unspoken truth growing near the light. 3. The public revelation. At a grand assembly gathered in the palace courtyard, with villagers and nobles alike watching, Kofi stepped forward. Flanked by Amara and Olumide, he revealed the secret long held close by his mother. I am Kofi, son of King Olumide and Amara the priestess. Raised among the earth and the people, I stand here as a bridge between our worlds. The crowd fell into a stunned silence, murmurs rippling through the gathered throng. 4. A new path. In response, King Olumide bestowed upon Kofi a new title befitting his unique role, General Leader of the United Villages and Protector of the Kingdom. This unprecedented honor recognized Kofi's wisdom and his role as a symbol of unity, a leader who commanded both the loyalty of the crown and the people's respect. Amara watched with pride and guarded hope as Kofi took on his mantle, her son born a secret love now publicly acknowledged, a beacon of healing and strength. The fragile peace. Though the war was averted, whispers of dissent grew. Lady Isioma, threatened by Kofi's rise, stoked fears and rivalries behind closed doors. The court's fragile peace masked tensions that could yet erupt. Kofi, embracing his new role, knew his journey was just beginning. The true challenge lay ahead in uniting divided hearts and steering a kingdom toward a future born from both legacy and hope. Seasons changed and Esura flourished anew. The famine faded to memory as the rivers, once fickle, now wound bright and full through fields rich with grain. At their banks, Kofi, now honored as general leader of Esura and the villages, walked in company of elders, listening as they shaped new agreements and common dreams. His leadership, born of toil, wisdom, and compassion, saw the merging of village ingenuity and royal resources. Peasant and courtier till the same land during great festivals, children born to every station learned side by side, and ancient stories were sung in both palace and farmstead under the same moon. Kofi's relationship with Amara deepened, their love no longer needing secrecy. Amara guided spiritual rites as a people's high priestess, a bridge of faith and tradition, and a beloved mother whose gentle counsel guided even her son's boldest reforms. King Olumide, his own legacy secure, grew to see Kofi not as threat, but as fulfillment, a uniter of worlds his own reign left divided. He ruled with dignity, yielding more freely to Kofi's vision, proud to witness peace and prosperity born from love and wisdom, not just blood and heritage. Father and son, once strangers, became true confidants on matters both public and private. Isioma, for her part, found renewed purpose. After seasons of conflict and heartbreak, she steered her energies to leading the Queen's Court of Women, spearheading education and festival reforms that won her respect in her own right. Over time, her rivalry with Amara mellowed into a wary mutual respect, and she found herself regarded not just as queen, but as a key guardian of Esura's peace. A new temple rose at the border of Esura and the outlying villages, a grand house of learning and healing. Here, priests, farmers, and counselors gathered to debate, teach, and celebrate the gift of both spirit and labor. At the final midsummer festival, the first truly abundant harvest, Kofi stood before the united peoples, Amara and Olumide at his side, Isioma just behind. The air thrummed with music, laughter, and the light of thousands of lanterns casting hope into night. Kofi spoke, his voice carrying over the fields. We are not defined by the place of our birth, the power of our title, nor even the legacy of our ancestors. We are made by what we build together, by the courage to forgive, the willingness to listen, and the hope to try again. Today, Esura is strong not because one person holds power, but because every voice, every hand, and every heart is honored beneath the sun and the rain. Cheers echoed to the hills. That night, as fireworks blossomed over Esura and the great river glittered silver beneath the stars, no whisper of old division could darken the joy, or the promise, of what they had become. Peace held as seasons rolled onward, and Esura was remembered in distant lands not as a kingdom of kings and servants, but as a land where unity, love, and hard-won wisdom reigned. The end.